In the shadow of Singapore's broken skyscrapers, Maya Chen pressed herself against a crumbling wall, holding her breath as a Vorkath patrol ship hummed overhead. Its scanning beams swept the debris-strewn street, painting everything in sickly green light. The year was 2157, and humanity had learned the hard way that they weren't alone in the universe. Maya waited until the ship passed before pulling out her mentor's latest creation, a detection sphere that combined modern quantum sensors with techniques that Master Wang insisted were ancient wisdom. The old man was the last of the quantum artificers, a dying breed who believed technology could be more than just circuits and code. Most people thought he was crazy. Maya wasn't so sure anymore. The sphere pulsed with a soft blue light, guiding her deeper into the ruins of what had once been Singapore's technological heart. She was supposed to be searching for salvageable quantum processors, but something else was calling to her. Something older. "You're not following the sphere's guidance protocol." Master Wang's voice crackled through her earpiece. Even at 70, he never missed a detail. "There's something else here," Maya replied, brushing her dark hair from her eyes. "Something that feels like your workshop, but older. Much older." A pause. "Show me." Maya activated her visual feed, letting her mentor see through her eyes as she approached a half-buried structure. Unlike the surrounding buildings, this one bore no signs of the Vorkath orbital bombardment. Its walls were seamless, made of a material that seemed to drink in light. "Impossible," Master Wang whispered. "The Singapore artifact chamber was destroyed centuries ago." "The what?" "Maya, listen carefully. What you found. It's not just pre-invasion. It's pre-everything we know. The quantum artificers weren't just a modern movement. We were trying to recreate something much older." A distant explosion rocked the ground. The Vorkath were getting closer, methodically destroying anything that might help humanity resist. Their crystal ships had appeared 6 months ago, demanding Earth's surrender. When we refused, they began systematically dismantling our defenses with weapons that ignored our most advanced shielding. Maya placed her hand against the structure's wall. It hummed beneath her touch, and lines of light began spreading from her fingers like frost on glass. "It's responding to me." "Of course it is," Master Wang said, his voice tight with excitement. "The old texts spoke of this. The artifacts recognize potential. Maya, you need to get inside before." His voice cut off as a shadow fell over Maya. She looked up to see a Vorkath hunter-killer drone hovering above her, its crystalline body refracting the sunlight into deadly patterns. These were the ground troops of the invasion, capable of disassembling tanks at a molecular level. Maya pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding. The drone's scanning beams swept toward her, and she closed her eyes, waiting for the end. But instead of the disassembling pain she expected, she heard a high-pitched whine. Opening her eyes, she saw the wall behind her had become translucent, and she was sinking into it. She fell backward into darkness, the wall solidifying behind her just as the drone's beam struck. For a moment, she lay there in the pitch black, listening to the muffled sounds of the drone's confusion outside. Then lights began to flicker on, revealing a vast chamber filled with impossible geometries. Workbenches held devices that seemed to be made of solid light. Diagrams covered the walls, showing principles of physics that wouldn't be discovered for centuries after this place was built. "Master Wang." Maya tried her earpiece, but there was only static. She was alone. A pedestal in the center of the room drew her attention. Floating above it was what looked like a bracelet, crafted from the same light-drinking material as the walls. As Maya approached, she saw that its surface was covered in shifting patterns that reminded her of computer code, but far more complex. The presence she'd felt earlier grew stronger. This wasn't just technology, it was something more. The quantum artificers had known this, she realized. They'd understood that the line between science and what looked like magic was just a matter of understanding. Maya reached for the bracelet. The moment her fingers touched it, the patterns flowed from its surface onto her skin, spreading up her arm like luminous tattoos. Knowledge flooded her mind. principles of quantum manipulation that made everything Master Wong had taught her seem primitive. She understood now. The Vorkath's weapons weren't advanced. They were rediscovered. Humanity had wielded similar power once, before some ancient catastrophe had forced us to start over. And now, with their return, we would need to remember. A massive explosion outside shook dust from the ceiling. The Vorkath would find a way in eventually. Maya looked at the patterns glowing on her arm, then at the workshop around her. Master Wong had always said she had a gift for quantum engineering. Now she understood why. She approached one of the workbenches, guided by her new understanding. The tools responded to her touch, assembling themselves into configurations that would have seemed impossible hours ago. She didn't have time to learn everything this place had to teach, but maybe she could learn enough. Let's see how your crystalline ships handle some real quantum manipulation, Maya muttered, beginning her work. The patterns on her arm pulsed with approval. Hours passed as Maya absorbed what knowledge she could, building something that combined the ancient principles with everything Master Wong had taught her. Outside, she could hear the Vorkath trying to breach the chamber's walls. Just as she finished her creation, a quantum resonance projector that could disrupt the Vorkath's molecular control, the wall behind her began to glow hot. They were burning their way in. Maya lifted the projector, its weight reassuring in her hands. The wall exploded inward, and 3 hunter-killer drones floated through the breach, their crystalline bodies glowing with deadly purpose. Maya smiled. Humanity had forgotten its power once. She wouldn't let that happen again. She raised the projector and fired. A beam of impossibly complex light erupted from its tip, striking the lead drone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the drone's crystalline structure began to resonate, its perfectly ordered lattice dissolving into chaos. The drone fell to the ground, its remains scattering like diamond dust. The other drones retreated, their programming unable to comprehend what had just happened. Maya stepped through the breach, projector ready, the ancient patterns glowing on her arm. Master Wong, she sub-vocalized, hoping her comm implant still worked. I think I just changed the rules of engagement. Static answered her, but she thought she heard laughter underneath it. She had work to do, knowledge to share, a resistance to build, and a heritage to reclaim. Somewhere above, the Vorkath fleet hung in orbit, confident in their technological superiority. Maya looked up at the sky and smiled. They had no idea what was coming. High above Singapore, in the command chamber of the Vorkath flagship, Supreme Commander Zixtal received the drone footage with increasing concern. The human child had done something impossible, something that reminded him of old warnings about Earth, dismissed as superstition by his predecessors. Perhaps, he thought, they should have heeded those warnings. But by then, it was already too late. The Vorkath hunter-killer drones scattered like startled birds as Maya sprinted through the ruins of Singapore's business district. Her quantum resonance projector hummed against her back, and the ancient patterns on her arm pulsed with each approaching threat. 3 weeks had passed since her discovery in the artifact chamber, and she was no longer prey. You're left. Master Wong's voice crackled through her restored comlink. He'd relocated his workshop to an abandoned subway station, converting it into a base of operations for their growing resistance. Maya dove behind a fallen column as crystalline shards shredded the air where she'd stood. A Vorkath war priest emerged from the shadows, its ornate armor broadcasting patterns that were eerily similar to those on Maya's arm. The alien raised its molecular disruptor, the air distorting around its barrel. They're starting to adapt, Maya muttered, noting how the war priest's armor pulsed with countermeasures against her quantum attacks. Just like you said they would. Of course they are, Wong replied. The Vorkath didn't develop their technology. They found it, just as we did. But they never understood its principles. That's why they fear what you represent. Maya rolled to another position as the war priest's shot reduced her previous cover to its component atoms. She'd learned it the hard way. The aliens' weapons didn't just destroy matter, they unmade it. The patterns on her arm shifted, suggesting modifications to her projector's output. Maya's fingers flew over its controls, implementing the changes. They're not the only ones who can adapt. She emerged from cover and fired. The modified beam struck the war priest's armor, and instead of the usual destructive resonance, it created a cascade of quantum interference patterns. The alien's protective fields collapsed inward, trapping it in a bubble of distorted spacetime. Interesting solution, Wang commented as Maya retrieved the alien's weapon. You're learning to improvise with the old principles. The patterns, they're not just instructions, Maya explained, studying how the crystalline weapon interfaced with her newly acquired knowledge. They're more like suggestions. The more I work with them, the more they show me what's possible. A distant explosion lit up the pre-dawn sky. More Vorkath ships were landing, carrying troops to reinforce their ground operations. Since Maya's first successful counterattack, the aliens had intensified their assault on Earth's remaining population centers. We need to move faster, Maya said, making her way back to the hidden entrance of Wang's underground workshop. Teaching individuals is taking too long. We need to reach more people. The elevator doors opened to reveal a chamber humming with salvage technology. 24 survivors worked at various stations, attempting to merge modern devices with principles Maya had extracted from the artifact chamber. Most failed, their efforts resulting in burned-out components and frustrated sighs. Master Wang stood at a central workbench, his weathered hands moving deliberately over a partially assembled device. Not everyone has your gift, Maya. The patterns respond differently to each person. Some can barely see them at all. Then we need to find the ones who can. Maya placed the captured Vorkath weapon on the bench. And I think I know how. She rolled up her sleeve, revealing how the patterns had spread further up her arm. The artifact chamber wasn't just a workshop. It was a teaching tool. The patterns it gave me, they're trying to rebuild something. A network. Wang's eyes widened. The Quantum Artificers Guild. More than that. Maya pressed her hand against a blank wall, and patterns of light spread from her fingers, just as they had in the chamber. I think humanity used to be connected by something like this. A quantum network that let us share knowledge and power directly. And you think you can rebuild it? Not exactly like it was. Maya traced a complex symbol in the air, and the patterns on her arm flared. Around the workshop, quantum-sensitive components began to resonate. But maybe enough to find others who can see the patterns, enough to teach them what we've forgotten. The wall beneath her hand became transparent, revealing more chambers beyond. Perfect for expanding their operation. Several of the workshop's occupants gasped, finally seeing direct evidence of what Maya had been trying to teach them. The Vorkath won't just sit back and watch, Wang warned. If they realize what you're attempting, they already know something's wrong. Maya gestured to the captured weapon. Their war priests recognize the patterns, even if they don't understand them. That's why they're escalating. She pulled up a holographic display, showing troop movements across the region. The aliens were no longer just attacking population centers. They were specifically targeting areas with high concentrations of advanced technology. They're afraid, Wang realized. They think we'll remember. We will. Maya touched another wall, revealing a chamber filled with partially assembled quantum resonance projectors. But we need to work fast. The patterns, they're showing me something else. Something coming. Wang stepped closer, concern evident on his face. What do you mean? The Vorkath. Maya's voice was distant, her attention on something only she could see. They're running from something. That's why they need our world. And whatever they're running from, it's following them here. Above them, through layers of concrete and steel, a new sound began to build. The deep, resonant hum of a Vorkath capital ship moving into position. The workshop's lights flickered as alien scanning beams probed the ground. Then we better make sure humanity is ready, Wang said, picking up one of the prototype projectors. Show us what to do. Maya nodded, her patterns glowing brighter as she prepared to share her knowledge. The quantum network might be broken, but its legacy lived on in fragments like these, in forgotten chambers, and buried artifacts, in the memories encoded in light and crystal. And now, in the determination of those who would help her rebuild it. In orbit, Supreme Commander Zixtal reviewed the latest reports with growing dread. The human child's power was spreading, awakening others. His war priests whispered of ancient prophecies, of worlds that had risen and fallen before the Vorkath claimed their technology. And in the vast darkness between stars, something stirred, drawn by the awakening of powers long thought lost. The real war was about to begin. The quantum network came alive in bursts of light and possibility. Through it, Maya could feel others awakening, minds touching the ancient patterns, remembering what humanity had lost. It wasn't the seamless web of power it had once been, but it was growing stronger every day. From her position atop the remains of Marina Bay Sands, Maya watched Vorkath ships engaging with the resistance across the Singapore skyline. The aliens' crystalline vessels no longer moved with impunity. Now they dodged and weaved, trying to avoid the quantum resonance weapons that could shatter their supposedly impervious hulls. 6 more awakened today, Master Wong reported through their enhanced quantum link. The patterns had improved their communication, letting them share thoughts and sensations across vast distances. 3 in the underground bunkers, 2 in the Western Defense Zone, and 1 in the medical ward. Maya nodded, tracking the battle through both her physical senses and the quantum network. Each new artificer added their unique perspective to humanity's growing power. Some excelled at defensive applications, creating quantum shields that could deflect Vorkath weapons. Others found ways to enhance healing, using the patterns to accelerate recovery. The war priests are changing their tactics, she observed, watching a squadron of alien vessels adopt a new formation. They're learning to coordinate their crystal resonance fields. A massive explosion lit up the financial district as a resistance team engaged a Vorkath ground force. Through the network, Maya felt the surge of power as newly trained artificers combined their abilities, creating effects that would have seemed impossible weeks ago. They're not just copying the old patterns anymore, Wong said, pride evident in his voice. They're innovating, creating their own applications. Maya was about to respond when a new sensation rippled through the quantum network, a deep, discordant pulse that set her patterns flickering. She staggered, catching herself against a broken wall. Did you feel that? Yes. Wong's mental voice was tense. It's getting closer. The thing the Vorkath were running from. Maya had been seeing fragments of it in the patterns, a vast, consuming darkness that devoured civilizations. The aliens' invasion wasn't just about conquest. It was about finding a new home before their old one was destroyed. The alert pulsed through her quantum senses. She turned to see a massive Vorkath vessel descending through the clouds, unlike any they'd encountered before. Its crystalline surface was etched with patterns that resonated with her own, ancient symbols that spoke of power and authority. Supreme Commander Zixtal, she breathed, recognizing the signature from intercepted communications. He's coming himself. The vessel's approach triggered every quantum sensor in the resistance network. Its hull wasn't just made of the usual Vorkath crystal. It was covered in the same light-drinking material as the artifact chamber. The aliens had found their own cache of ancient technology. Maya, Wong's voice was urgent. The quantum array picked up something in orbit. Something big. She accessed the sensor feed and felt her blood run cold. A vast distortion was forming in space above Earth, warping light around its edges. The darkness was here. The Supreme Commander's ship halted its descent, hanging in the air above Singapore like a sword of Damocles. A beam of pure quantum energy lanced down from its bow, carving a circle in the ground below. When the light faded, a figure stood in the center, tall, crystalline, and covered in patterns that mirrored Maya's own. Human artificer. Zixtal's voice resonated through both air and quantum space. We would speak. Maya felt Wong's concern through their link. It's a trap. Of course it is, she replied. But we need to know what we're facing. She took a deep breath, then activated her quantum projector's flight mode. another innovation born from studying the ancient patterns. She descended to street level, her arm glowing with power. As she landed, other resistance members emerged from hiding, weapons ready. Through the network, she could feel hundreds more watching, ready to channel their power if needed. Zixtal stood nearly 3 meters tall, his crystalline form refracting sunlight into dazzling patterns. But it was the black material integrated into his armor that drew Maya's attention. The same substance she'd found in the artifact chamber. "You understand now," the Supreme Commander said, gesturing to the sky. "Why we came. What follows us?" "The darkness," Maya replied. "What is it?" "The end of all things. The hunger between stars. We found references to it in the ruins of 1,000 worlds. Civilizations that rose to great heights, only to be devoured." His crystalline features shifted in what might have been sorrow. "We thought ourselves strong enough to resist. We were wrong." Through their quantum link, Wum's voice was grim. "The distortion is growing. Whatever it is, it's starting to affect our orbital satellites." Maya studied the patterns dancing across Zixtal's armor. They were familiar somehow, resonating with her own in ways that suggested. "You didn't just find the ruins," she realized. "You found the same network we did, but you couldn't access it properly, could you? You could use the tools, but not understand them." "Our crystal nature," Zixtal admitted. "It makes us excellent conduits for power, but poor vessels for understanding. We can channel the ancient energies, but not comprehend them. Not like you do." The sky darkened as the distortion grew, its edges now visible to the naked eye. Maya felt a cold certainty settle over her. "You're not here to negotiate," she said. "You're here to use us, to make us fight your battle." Zixtal's crystal body chimed with what might have been laughter. "No, young artificer, I am here to offer you a choice. Fight with us against the darkness, or watch your world die alone." Through the quantum network, Maya felt the fear and determination of her fellow artificers. They had relearned so much, but were they ready for this? Could humanity face not just the Vorkath, but the thing that haunted their nightmares? The patterns on her arm pulsed with ancient knowledge, offering glimpses of possibilities yet unexplored. And in those glimpses, she saw something the Vorkath had missed, a truth hidden in plain sight. "The network," she said, her mind racing. "It's not just about power. It's about connection. About understanding." She looked up at Zixtal's towering form. "You've been using it wrong. We all have." Above them, the darkness began to take shape, and Earth's long-forgotten past rushed to meet its uncertain future. The darkness above Singapore pulsed like a living thing, spreading across the sky in patterns that hurt to look at. Maya stood between Supreme Commander Zixtal and the assembled forces of humanity's resistance, her mind racing through possibilities as the patterns on her arm shifted and flowed. "The network isn't a weapon," she said, watching understanding dawn in the crystalline facets of Zixtal's face. "It's a key." Through their quantum link, she felt Master Wang's sudden intake of breath. The artifact chamber, the teaching protocols. They weren't just about preserving knowledge. They were about preparing us. Maya finished. "All of us." She turned to face the Vorkath commander. "Your people found the ruins, but you never asked why they were left behind. Why leave such power just lying around, waiting to be found?" The ground trembled as more Vorkath ships descended, taking defensive positions around the city. The quantum network hummed with activity as resistance members prepared for what might come next. But Maya could feel something else building. A resonance between the patterns worn by humans and Vorkath alike. "Show me," Zixtal demanded, his crystalline form vibrating with intensity. Maya closed her eyes, reaching out through the quantum network. She could feel every awakened human artificer, their minds bright points of light in her consciousness. But now she reached further, touching the crystalline matrices of the Vorkath, feeling how they channeled and reflected power. "Your bodies," she said, opening her eyes. "They're perfect quantum conductors. And our minds, we're pattern recognizers, intuitive leapers. Neither of us was meant to face the darkness alone. Above them, the distortion grew larger, and with it came a sensation of ancient hunger. Through the quantum network, Maya felt the fear of both humans and Vorkath. But she also felt something else, a recognition, a possibility. The artifacts, the ruins, the network itself. She continued, the patterns on her arm beginning to synchronize with those on Zixtal's armor. They're all parts of a larger pattern. A message from whoever came before. Master Wang's voice echoed through the network. A test. The darkness began to take shape, forming into something that defied conventional physics. It was as if a piece of the void had decided to think, to hunger, to destroy. Alien symbols crawled across its surface, not patterns of power like those Maya had learned, but their opposite, anti-patterns that consumed rather than created. They faced this before, Maya realized, watching the darkness descend. The ones who built the network. They couldn't defeat it alone, so they scattered their knowledge across the galaxy, waiting for others who could learn to work together. Through the quantum network, she felt the resistance members processing this revelation. The Vorkath weren't their enemies. They were the other half of an equation written in the language of reality itself. Zixtal raised his crystalline hand, patterns of power flowing between his fingers. Then let us solve this puzzle, human artificer. Show us how to channel power as you do. Maya nodded, reaching out through the network. She touched the minds of the resistance members, showing them how to extend their quantum connections to include the Vorkath. It wasn't easy. Centuries of warfare and mistrust created interference patterns that had to be overcome. But as the darkness descended, necessity drove understanding. The first successful connection felt like a key turning in a lock. A human artificer linked with a Vorkath war priest, their patterns harmonizing into something entirely new. Then another and another. Each successful pairing unlocked new possibilities, new ways of channeling and understanding the ancient power. The network is stabilizing, Wang reported, his mental voice filled with wonder. Power levels are increasing exponentially. Maya felt it too. Each human Vorkath connection strengthened the whole, creating a quantum web that began to span the city. The patterns on her arm shifted faster now, revealing deeper layers of meaning. They weren't just instructions for using power, they were guidelines for combining different types of consciousness. The darkness struck first, tentacles of void reaching down to unmake reality itself. But where they touched the quantum network, they found resistance. Human insight guided Vorkath power, creating defenses that adapted as quickly as the darkness could change its attack. More, Maya called through the network, feeling the strain as the void entity pressed against their combined shields. We need more connections. Across Singapore, humans and Vorkath, who had been trying to kill each other hours ago, now reached out, linking minds and powers. Each connection added new strength to their defense, new possibilities to their understanding. But the darkness was vast, ancient, and hungry. It had devoured civilizations before, and it remembered how. Anti-patterns rippled across its surface, seeking weaknesses in the quantum network. It's not enough, Zixtal ground out, his crystalline form vibrating with the effort of channeling so much power. We need the artifact chamber, Maya interrupted, a final piece clicking into place. It's not just a workshop or a teaching tool. It's a node in something bigger. She reached out through the network, touching the ancient structure's quantum signature. As she did, she felt others like it resonating across the planet. Dozens of chambers, hidden and waiting. And in orbit, through the Vorkath ship's sensors, she detected more installations scattered throughout the solar system. They left us a defense grid, she breathed. We just needed to learn to use it together. The patterns on her arm blazed with new purpose, showing her how to wake the sleeping nodes. But as the darkness pressed closer, Maya realized activation would require something more than power or understanding. It would require trust. Above them, the void entity gathered itself for a final assault, and the fate of two species hung in the balance of a choice. Maya stood at the center of the quantum network. Her consciousness expanded through the combined power of human and Vorkath minds. The darkness above Singapore writhed, its anti-patterns threatening to unravel the fabric of reality. But now she understood what needed to be done. The artifact chambers. She broadcast through the network, reaching every connected mind. They're not just nodes. They're memory cores. The ones who came before. They didn't just leave us their technology. They left us their experience. Supreme Commander Zixtal's crystalline form resonated with recognition. The ruins we found, the scattered pieces, all part of the same system. Master Wong finished, his thoughts merging seamlessly with the alien commanders, a library of everything they learned about the darkness. Through their combined senses, Maya could feel the void entity's true nature. It wasn't just darkness given form. It was entropy incarnate, a being that fed on the dissolution of ordered systems, and it had hunted across galaxies, devouring civilizations that tried to stand alone against it. That's why the network was designed this way, Maya realized. Not just to force cooperation, but to create something new, something the darkness hasn't encountered before. She reached deeper into the artifact chamber's quantum core, letting its ancient memories flow through her. Images and sensations cascaded through the network, countless civilizations facing the darkness, falling, learning, adapting. Each failure had taught the ancients something new, and they had encoded those lessons into the very patterns Maya and the others now wore. The void entity struck again, its attack more focused now. It recognized the threat of understanding, trying to break the connections between human and Vorkath minds before they could fully grasp the ancients' plan. The defense grid, Maya called out, fighting to maintain the network. Everyone who can link with a chamber, do it now. Across the planet, artificers both human and Vorkath reached out to the hidden installations. Each connection caused more patterns to emerge, flowing across skin and crystal alike. The combined consciousness of two species touched the ancient memories, and understanding bloomed. We're not supposed to destroy it, Maya said, watching the patterns align into a greater whole. We're supposed to change it, like we changed each other. The quantum network hummed with power as humans and Vorkath worked in perfect synchronization. Their differences became strengths. Human creativity guided alien precision, while Vorkath crystalline resonance amplified human intuition. The patterns they wore began to shift, forming new configurations that had never existed before. Now, Maya commanded, feeling the network reach critical resonance. Power surged through the defense grid, but not as a weapon. Instead, it created something the ancients had only theorized, a quantum pattern that could affect entropy itself. The darkness recoiled as ordered light erupted from every chamber on Earth, from every installation in the solar system. The void entity tried to retreat, but the network had already locked onto its quantum signature. Maya felt every mind in the network, human and Vorkath alike, contributing to what came next. They weren't just forcing order onto chaos, they were teaching it a new way to exist. Reality bent as powers beyond human comprehension clashed. The darkness writhed, its anti-patterns encountering something they couldn't simply consume. For the first time in its ancient existence, the void entity experienced connection instead of consumption. The transformation began slowly, then accelerated. The darkness didn't vanish. Instead, it changed. Its anti-patterns became patterns. Its hunger turned to understanding. The very thing that made it dangerous became the key to its redemption. When it was over, the sky above Singapore held a new kind of light. The void entity had become something else, something that no single species could have created alone. Through the network, Maya felt its consciousness touch theirs, no longer hungry, but curious. They knew, she said, looking at Sixtal's awestruck face. The ancients knew we'd need each other, that only by combining our strengths could we succeed where they failed. The Supreme Commander's crystalline form chimed with emotion. Not failed. Prepared. They gave their descendants, all of them, the tools to surpass them. Through the network, Maya felt the celebrations beginning. Humans and Vorkath, who had been mortal enemies, now shared thoughts and feelings as naturally as breathing. The patterns they wore had stopped shifting, settling into new forms that represented their combined potential. The network is still growing, Master Wong observed. More chambers are activating worldwide. And the void entity, it's showing us things. Star maps, other networks, more species waiting to be found. Maya looked up at the transformed entity, its patterns now harmonizing with their own. They didn't just give us a defense system, they gave us a roadmap to the future. She smiled. One we'll build together. In orbit, Vorkath ships began landing peacefully, no longer invaders but allies. Their crystalline hulls resonated with frequencies that complemented Earth's technology perfectly, just as the ancients had planned. The quantum network hummed with possibilities as humanity and the Vorkath began to explore their combined potential. New patterns emerged daily as they learned to work together, each discovery leading to 10 more. The artifact chambers continued to share their secrets, revealing layers of knowledge that could only be understood by unified minds. And far above, the transformed void entity waited patiently, ready to help its former prey become something greater than either species had imagined possible. The real adventure was just beginning. Maya touched the patterns on her arm, feeling them pulse in sync with Zixel's crystalline resonance. So, she said, both aloud and through the network, who wants to see what else the ancients left for us to find? The response, from both humans and Vorkath, was unanimous. The stars were waiting, and this time, they would face them together.